How was Aaron? Yeah. When you're at an event, and I know I mentioned this once before, how many is this is the first time you've been to an ART Live? Who was at the one in June? Oh, okay, so we got a few. When you attend an event, what I would love for you to do is, one, plan in advance to take notes by hand if possible instead of by computer. There's a learning difference when you write things out versus when you are typing them.
I don't need my iPhone.
He who has the mic first shouldn't throw shade at the guy who has the mic next. That's a quote from, who did we decide? Lance Welch, yeah. That's just made that one up. First of all, take notes by hand. Second of all, before you even go on a break, what I would love for you to do is to do a real quick debrief. So I doubt that anyone did that. So what I want us to do right now is we're going to take 60 seconds, and I want you to look through your notes that you took of what Aaron was talking about and either highlight, asterisk, underline, do something from what he shared this morning that really stood out. Go. Cindy said there was nothing. Sorry, Aaron.
I said I can't do any more because they're all
No.
They're all
Okay, I want 2 or 3 people that will volunteer and give me one thing that you took away from Aaron's talk. Hands up first gets, yes, Bradley. Bradley's takeaway, he meaning God, didn't give us authority or dominion over other people. Okay? Who else? Ross. A movement creates community. Very good. Jody.
If you step away from a movement, you'll have to beg people to buy.
Ooh. Everyone hear that one? Very good. When we do things like what you just did,
If you step away from a movement, you'll have to beg people to buy.
beg. So when you do what we just did, that creates a neural imprint. So it makes it more memorable. It's something that you're going to be able to pull back later. Another piece about making the most out of any event is when you walk into the event with the expectation that you're going to explain it or teach it to someone else. When your mind comes into an event like this with the expectation that I'm going to teach this to someone else, your mind will literally grab onto things with an intentional basis behind it. Does that make sense? Because at that point, you're not here to just be entertained. And no one came here to be entertained. I mean, goodness, it's Aaron and Lance. I mean, no. But you are here to get something that's going to add value to your life later. And when you are intent with, I'm going to teach this to someone else, your mind will adopt it. It'll grab hold of things, and it makes it a whole lot more palatable. Does that make sense? Fantastic. All right. I get to talk about clarity. Clarity, for me, is an absolute superpower. Developing a superpower is anything but easy or convenient. But when we talk about clarity, when we go through this, I'm promising you there will be nothing in this talk that you would think, oh, that's rocket science. No, it's actually quite simple, but it's difficult to implement because it is inconvenient. We shy, as a culture, we tend to shy away from anything that's inconvenient. But I can promise you, if we avoid digging into what does it take to create clarity, it will prove to be much more inconvenient on us later. So we get to choose where we're going to be inconvenienced, front end or back end. And on the back end, it's exponential. Fair enough? So one of the things I want to do is see if we can get at least somewhat close to a consensus on what is clarity. Then we're going to talk about some examples of clarity. How do you implement it? How do you identify it somewhere else? And then we're going to close it out with one of the one of the small steps that I give some of my clients as far as how do you identify clarity in your own life. Now, there is a form on my website that I condensed it this year, but if you want it, go to the website. It's thelancewelch.com. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and look for what's called R and V template. Isn't that what we called it, Jeremy? Just R and V? Stands for reflect and vision cast. So go get it. It's free. Here's what Webster's says. The quality of being clear, such as the quality of being easily understood, the state of having a full, detailed, and orderly mental grasp of something. You want a shorter version? Knowing what you want and why you want it. For me, that is the real definition of clarity, knowing what you want and why you want it. The other thing about clarity is brevity exposes your clarity. The more concise you can make your message, the more clear it is in your mind on how to communicate it. Have you ever asked somebody a question and 5 minutes in, they're still talking, and you don't have a clue really what their answer is? That's a telltale sign that they're not crystal clear on what their answer is. When you ask a question and they give you a concise answer, you can always ask for more information. But if they're still talking 5 minutes later trying to convince you that they know what they want, they probably don't really know what they want. If you don't know what you want, you don't know how to get it. Fair? One thing I've learned over the years is having clarity allows you to absorb the chaos and dispel distractions. Who was at the event where we did the numbers exercise? Okay. For you all that had your hands up, remember the first time we went through that? And I kept talking, and several of you tried to get me to quit? Because it was what? It was distracting. The second time we went through it, when you had clarity of your outcome and a clear process, I talked just as much, if not more, but no one asked me to be quiet the second time. Why? You were able to absorb the chaos and dispel my distractions. When you know what you want, the pathway to get there will show up. And sometimes it's a long path. And I'll give an example on that here in just a little bit. I call it, and I don't want anyone to, well, I mean, you can email me, I don't care. I call it a ruthless obsession. When I have a ruthless obsession of what I want to accomplish, I can absorb a lot of chaos, a lot of distractions. I'm not negating the prayer life and the spiritual component. I'm just saying when you are crystal clear on what you want, you can absorb and dispel a lot. Funny, Aaron mentioned Napoleon Hill. Who has read, well, he's got several really good books, but who has read the one, Think and Grow Rich? In Think and Grow Rich, he calls it a definiteness of purpose, right? I liken that to a ruthless obsession, but if you don't like the words ruthless obsession, adopt his. But here's his actual quote: when you have a definiteness of purpose, you can accomplish anything. That's a pretty bold statement. What I've noticed is when I have a ruthless obsession on something, and maybe I don't even have a plan on how to accomplish it, but when I'm that clear on what I want and why I want it, what's interesting is we, as a human, we will begin to intuitively make decisions that align with reaching that purpose. Does that make sense? So we could dig deep, and my goal of this morning is to not take the full hour. I want to carve out 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what it looks like or sounds like, and open it up for some Q&A. Fair? We okay with that, Cindy? Okay. How many boys do I have? Boys, how many sons? I have 3 boys. When they were 13, 10, and 8, somewhere in that range, I had heard a story about this Scottish evangelist. How many have heard me tell that story before? Nobody, so you're going to get to hear it today. That's the thing about doing events multiple times, you forget what stories you've told. So the Scottish evangelist, the short story is, he knew that at an early age he was called to reach the world for Christ before he ever got married. So once he got married, he told his wife, this is my mission. I will be home periodically, but I'm going to be on the road. I'm reaching the world for Christ. In his 40s, by this point he had 3 sons, and that might have been why it hit me so hard when I heard this story about 25, 30 years ago. But when he heard message he found was the world was too big for him to reach the entire world, so he decided, I'm going to reduce my footprint and I'm just going to reach my continent. In his 50s, realized the continent's too big for me to reach the world reach the continent for Christ, so I'm going to reduce the footprint again. And in his 60s, he reduced it again. He spent his entire life on the mission field. But what was so disappointing was on his deathbed, it finally dawned on him, he was supposed to reach the world for Christ, but he was supposed to do it through his 3 sons. Because his sons weren't even at his deathbed. He had no relationship with his sons. So from that moment, I felt like it was just a message to me. My sons are going to have a global impact. And if you look at them now, they really are, and it's so fun to watch. Has anybody watched or heard the podcast, The Deep End? Wow. This couple right here manages that for them. So, and they also do Beyond the Nest for me. Thank you so much. But my sons are reaching the world, and it's so fun to watch. But when this took place 25, 30 years ago, there were no handbooks on how do you do this. What are the next steps? I honestly had no idea. I just knew that was my charge, that was my mission. And I began to intuitively make decisions that somehow, 25, 30 years later, has equipped them to do just that. I started taking them to the different leadership events I was going to. Or if I was speaking somewhere with my corporate job, I would take them with me. I'd let them carry my projector. Do you remember the little portable projectors? Or the briefcase. But I wanted them to be in rooms with other people that challenged them. Now, 13 to 15, which Aiden, thank you for being here, by the way. Yeah. Youngest guy to hear, right? Let's give it up for Aiden. And give it up to you, Jeremy. I know these are adult events, but I want to definitely open it up to what they've done. Let's say 13 and above. If you want to start bringing your son, your daughter to events like this to begin to get their minds and bodies used to being around other leaders, let's do that. Let's begin to immerse them in opportunities to be comfortable in leadership positions. Fair? All right, I probably should have done a video on that yesterday because I'm getting some dirty looks from some folks. So when you know what you want, you will intuitively make decisions that align with that. What happens if I have a weight goal? Let's say I wanted to lose, this is for ease of numbers, I want to lose 40 pounds by the end of the year. It helps to have a plan or coach or strategy. But even if I don't, if I have a ruthless obsession to hit that target, I will intuitively know not to take that chocolate milkshake that Aaron's running about. And I don't like chocolate, so that would be an easy one, but isn't that right? Donuts, cake, carrot cake, my wife's triple berry cobbler that she makes. If I have a ruthless obsession to hit that target, I will even be able to say no to that dessert. Make sense? And I want to revisit something I shared last June, and it's called the predictive outcome cycle. Y'all remember that? So only about half of you were at that event, but that's okay. I want to go over it again. I want to talk about the story that we tell ourselves impacts our clarity. So if you have notes where you're actually able to write, the very first word I want you to write on the left side of your paper is the word beliefs. Beliefs. B as in boy, E-L-I-E-F-S. For our Canadian friends who spell differently. Yeah, the more I learn names, the less comfortable you will get, because I'm an equal opportunity offender, so we'll just have a little fun with that. To the right of the word beliefs, I want you to draw an arrow, maybe an inch or two long. Challenge on the phone there, isn't it? You're still doing it, okay. Draw an arrow. The next word is perspectives. There's just two. On the top line. We'll get into what they are in a second. We'll go back through. Our question, are these core beliefs? No, the values, and that's a little different. So we have beliefs, an arrow, the word perspectives. Now an arrow down, and the word actions. Actions is below perspective. Below the word perspective, write the word actions. And an arrow to the left, and this word will be right below beliefs, and it's called results. So we have beliefs, perspective, down a line, we have actions, results, and an arrow going back up to beliefs. We have now created a picture that helps some people grasp what we're getting ready to talk about. And I know we hit this in June. Repetition is good. Your beliefs, whether they're positive or negative, will dictate the perspective you have on the things that come into your life. If I am leaning towards a negative bent towards beliefs, virtually everything that comes into my life, my perspective will see that as a threat. If I see something as a threat, it dictates the type of actions I take. And if my actions are based upon that negative bent and I see it as a threat, those weaker actions, or maybe no action at all, will create a certain type of result or outcome. And then that result validates or confirms the beliefs that I already had. And this is why we call it the predictive outcome cycle. If I'm more optimistic, I am a faith-based, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, I know I have a word or a direction I'm supposed to go. The perspective of everything that I see come into my life is an opportunity. If I view this thing as an opportunity, it creates certain type of actions. Those actions create a different type of result than what we talked about just a little bit ago. And those results validate or confirm the belief that I had that things are going to turn out well. That make sense? So if we look at the results that we're getting, where do we need to drop into on this graph to begin to make a difference in the outcomes that we're dealing with? It starts with our beliefs. if we don't like the way it looks like everything that comes in our life sucks, this is hard, that's a perspective that we have that is a reality that we're getting to deal with. Now, it may not be someone else's reality. They may look at this as, man, they've got it made. It comes back to, what are your beliefs? And I'm a huge proponent of Remarkable. I know some of y'all have those. So I've created a template for my Remarkable for my daily calendar with space for all the appointments on the right and then my tasks and to-dos on the left. But I've written on the top of it 2 different words. Top left side of the page, and these are just trigger words. These are words that helps me stay focused. Because once you see a trigger word and you know the deep meaning of that particular word for you, every time you see it, even if it's in your peripheral, your subconscious mind is still going to be picking up on that. So on the top left of my page, I have the word trust. And this, for me, goes back to Romans 8:28. For we know, what? All things will work together for my good, because I love the Lord and I'm called according to his purpose. And my challenge for me this year is that I do absolutely trust him. How easy it is to say, oh, I trust God. And then I walk around in anxiety the rest of the day. Am I really trusting him? Or am I wanting to get into the position of control so I can fix it? For trust, I want to get to the point where it doesn't matter what kind of response, email, disappointment, fault, whatever, that I can look at that and almost be excited. It's like, God, what are you going to do with this? Because I trust him that all things are going to work together for my good. Now, if I don't trust him, then what? Fear, anxiety, doubt, dread. And what does that do to your body, your immune system, and your cortisol? And for some, the eating habits. You self-medicate with food or movies or alcohol or whatever. Anything that begins to take the place of your peace and comfort in God is going to be the wrong thing. The other side of the page, I have the word ask. And this is referencing Jeremiah 33:3, where he says, ask of me, and I will tell you remarkable things that are yet to come that you're not aware of. That's pretty strong. So I have those 2 words on the top of my page that helps keep me focused on the clarity piece. The framework of our words will be evidence. They will come out in or the framework of our thoughts will come out in our words. Think about somebody that would say, I can't afford that. Or, I don't have time to do that. Or, I don't know if I deserve to be in that room. Those are all frameworks for a weak position, and the words that we use are very telling. Let's talk about that first one. I can't afford that. Full transparency, anyone ever said that? Okay. Most of the time, that is not a true statement. Most of the time. And I give an example of what if I were going to tell you, Gina, you have to go to this place and have dinner, and it's $2.50 a plate per person. Most people, I shouldn't say most, a lot of folks would hear $250 a person or $500 for a couple, and their first thought, oh, I can't afford that. Now, in reality, if your life depended on it, or a family member's life depended on it, you'd figure it out. You would come up with that $500 for a really amazing meal. But the framework of saying, oh, I can't afford that, that is a mindset that will permeate a position of lack in every area of your life. It is better to frame it, I can think of other things I'd rather do with $500. Basically what you're saying is, I have it, but it doesn't derive the value or the economic benefit of it that I could get elsewhere. I might rather just leave it in my checking account, and I feel better with that. But when you put it from a perspective of, I'm choosing not to, it's now what the phrase is locus of control. You're taking control of the framework of it, and you're not saying, I can't afford it. Because I can't afford it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I've told you, it will permeate other areas of your life. So let's make a decision collectively. We're just not going to say that. Fair? We're not going to say, I can't afford it anymore. Reframe it and say it in a word that actually feeds more of a positive outcome. What about I don't have time? Those that know me well know that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves. It will really trigger me. And if I know you well, you're going to hear about it. If I don't know you well, I'll just do this. Yeah. We will always make time for those things that are a priority. This is about priority management. If I ask somebody, you should read this book. Yeah, I don't have time. You do. I would much rather you tell me that's not a priority. I may not like it, but I can absolutely respect that. Or have you watched this podcast? Yeah, I don't have time to watch things like that. You will always, always, always make time for those things that are a priority. I have a client, he's fixed it now, so I can tell on him, but I'm not going to use his name. He's been married 17 years, and until he and I started working together, it had been almost 16 years since they'd had an actual date. Because they didn't have time. They have 3 kids, he coaches their soccer, she works, he works. Now they're having at least 2 date nights a month. We haven't gotten to the weekly, but that's a huge amount of progress. And what he will tell you is he had no idea how important it was to his wife. It is a priority, and it is something you can accomplish. So don't use the phrase, I don't have time, because that is a poverty mindset around time. You have all the time that you need to get the things done that God's called you to do, unless you begin to make excuses. What about this last one? I don't know if I deserve to be in a room like that. I used to say that a lot, or at least think it a lot when I was younger, and I'd get an opportunity to be in some rooms with business people. Yeah, I don't think I belong there. That's a poverty mindset around my self-worth. You are well equipped and designed to be anywhere. And I remember many years ago, a pastor had given a talk, or his sermon, you cannot feel inferior to someone without also feeling superior to someone else. If you have an inferiority complex around some people, the inverse of that is typically true, and it's a framework that, okay, I'm inferior to this group, I must be superior to this group. No offense, you guys. Everybody has worth. The person that runs multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar organizations, or the person in the entry level in the mailroom or the janitorial, Everybody has worth. And you know what people have in common? They love to hear what? Their name. Name signifies value. If I value you, I will use your name. Or pick on you, one of the two. Or both. And some people they're just easier to dish it out to than others. From other countries that live here. And that's why really early on, that was another thing that we'd worked with our boys on. We would recognize our server's name. And if I missed it, I'm going to ask them, hey, I missed your name. What's your name? And I used to, way back when the kids were younger, would put a $5 bill or something on the table. And at the end, it's like, hey, $5, who remembers our server's name? And they started fighting over that, but they would learn that it was important. It was important to Dad that they understood or that they could use a person's name to add value to them. And it's been fun to watch these guys when we go to dinner with them. If they miss the server's name, to watch them ask, hey, I missed your name. And I promise you, they would tell you that was their idea. There's so many things that they just don't remember, and I'm totally okay with that. At this point, I don't care. I just love watching them grow. So that's been fun. Time is flying by. All right, I'm going to skip a lot of this. I want to give you the framework of a particular phrase that's going to add tremendous clarity into how you're thinking about how this year is going to go. And before I do that, I see there's a good number of actual coaches in this room. If you're a coach of any kind, will you raise your hand? Look at that. There is absolutely no reason to use the old tried and true trial and error method. It is effective, but it's probably the most expensive way to grow. Trial and error is effective because, boy, you learn a lot, but it's the slowest and the most expensive. Trial and error is far more expensive than working with one of us coaches. I can promise you that. All right, I want you to write this down. And this will be homework for you. Not that I'm going to follow up with this many next week. But, you ready? Right now, those are your first two words. Right now, comma. It is 12/31/2025. And it was the best year of my life in the area of my, and then I want you to, a big long blank. So I'll catch up. Right now, it is 12/31/2025, and it was the best year of my life in the area of my blank because, colon. And here are the 6 areas that I use for my blank. Personal health, marriage if you're married, family relationships, your kids, in-laws if that applies, business, finances, and the last one, spiritual life. It's 12/31/2025, and it was the absolute best year of my life in the area of my marriage because Next thing is I want you to write a paragraph. I want you to write a paragraph of whatever you put into that blank that literally when you read it back, you feel it. It's emotional. It creates a response in you that tells me then you've got your answer. Now, if we were sitting down together and I were to do this with you one-on-one and you read it off like as if it was bullet points and there's no emotional engagement, there's no movement, we're going to redo it. It's the emotional pull that makes the difference. There's a difference between a push target and a pull target. A pull target is one that literally compels you to do something about making sure you reach this. A push target is maybe something I'm telling you you should do. Does that make sense? I want you to write the paragraph of why was this the absolute best year of your married life? Why was this the best year of your personal health? Why was this the best year with your family relationships, your business? I separate business and finance. As business owners, we can be incredibly successful with business and horrible at managing our personal finances. So we separate those so we can have distinct value pieces in each one. Now, we get to exercise the brevity clause that I talked to you earlier. We've got this whole paragraph, and I want you to do the best you can to condense that paragraph down to one sentence. What this does is it creates such a level of clarity for you that even without a plan and a strategy, you're going to begin to intuitively do things that support that. If I want my marriage to be the best it's ever been, and I have a ruthless obsession with what that can look like, it'll make my decision-making ability around my wife, for my wife, look differently than if I'm just completely winging it. Third step, you begin to you reverse engineer your steps to make this thing happen. Step 3 is you reverse engineer. You come up with tactics, strategies, behaviors. You decide, I'm going to read this book on this. I'm going to hire this coach for this. I'm going to watch this podcast for this. You're going to create a strategy to make this thing a reality. And the fourth step, set quarterly milestones. We go back quarterly milestones. If, for example, to make it easy, let's say the weight goal, I wanted to lose 40 pounds. An easy way to look at the Q1 is I want to be down 10 by the end of the first quarter, right? Because now we're on path, if you're going to use a weight. Our marriage, one of the things we're going to re-implement now that we haven't done this one for a while because the boys have been gone, we're now implementing the quarterly getaways. We used to do that all the time when they were younger. It's a 3-day weekend, once a quarter. Get away and do something. It's not rocket science, but it's the intentionality. Don't know where we're going, but it's already on the calendar. February 21st is the weekend. We won't be at church that weekend, by the way. We out. Okay. I had a QR code, but it wasn't working. But I want to promote this because this is my passion. Right? This is my movement. Didn't know how to get there when they were younger. That's born out of that. So if you haven't read it, this isn't about self-promotion because I'm going to make $3 or $4 off of a book. It is about equipping you to literally have a blueprint of what you can do intentionally to create an intentional legacy and have a multi-generational impact. Thank you, Lauren, for helping with that. I remember first time I gave it to her, she's like, this is good. Like, well, what were you expecting? You didn't know what to expect. So definitely want to encourage you to get it. I do have I think I brought 10 with me. If anyone wants one today, I can do that. But for the most part, Amazon.com, Audible, my voice and all. It's now 11 o'clock. We've got 15 minutes. I want to pause right there, hit from Q&A. Is there any questions that anyone has on anything we've talked about? Or anything that you want to know about Aaron that I can share, since I have the mic? Oh, hallelujah. Love it, Jen. Yes, ma'am. To paraphrase, I think what was the process of going from where I was surviving, to having a growth mindset and looking to help other people? Yeah, probably the biggest piece was I was a young sales leader with a Fortune 100 company and realized that I had no idea how to lead. And so I became a student of John Maxwell first and foremost. Ended up becoming a coach in his organization, but I've read dozens and dozens of his books. But it was one of those things that I realized if all these agents, these seasoned professionals were looking to me for direction, they were in trouble. And I had one agent, God love him, he's passed now, but he used to call me at least 4 mornings out of every 5. Usually at 7:30, because he knew I was there early, and he used to remind me, son, I've been an agent longer than you've been alive. What are you going to do for me today? I don't know, Morris. I got nothing. Well, it's not a good answer. So I started reading books, realized, what you don't know will definitely hold you back, and it could be a very negative impact on those around you. Then I started reading parenting books, marriage books, because the early years of our marriage wasn't great. 2 firstborns, type A personalities, sparks would fly. The verse, iron sharpens iron. Everybody thinks, oh, no, it's not a pretty sight, right? That's iron hitting it and sparks flying. And then hearing that story about the Scottish evangelist was kind of like the eye-opening piece. Is if my boys are going to be equipped to leave the house, it was going to have to be done by somebody different than the way I was at that time. I had to become someone else, totally different. Does that help? Somewhat? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What does it look like to align your goals and all the things here with your spouse or your family? How do you do that?
So how do you align? Well, when you have a wife who is strong-willed and doesn't like setting goals, not that I would know that. No, it is vitally important. What Allison and I do is we work on this separate for about 10 to 30 minutes at each time, depending on the task. And then we come back together and we talk about the 2 goals. And it's wonderful when there's a tremendous amount of overlap, but it's also wonderful when they're drastically different. And at that point, you get to look at, think what you were even talking about, when there's an alignment, then we can work on these things together because we're going down the same lane. When there's not an alignment, it doesn't mean either one's wrong, but your goals and her goals may be different, and some of them you have to work on your own. What was more important for us in the early stages when we first started doing these was how do we equip our boys to learn about goal setting? And so that's really what got us on the same page is how do we equip them to become critical thinkers, strategic thinkers, goal setters? How do you help them even navigate the conversation piece of what do they want to accomplish and how do they get there? More than anything else, it's, with kids anyways, for us, we had to make it fun. One of the ways we did that, I think we talked with Lauren a lot, food and fire worked with our boys. If we had food and fire, we had their attention and they would talk. If we just wanted to sit on the couch and kumbaya, they didn't last very long. So, does that help? Any other questions? Okay, I guess not. So what I want to do now is what I did at the very beginning. I'm going to ask for some folks to pick up something that they wrote down that was a aha or a takeaway that you're going to do differently or that you're going to share with somebody else. Austin.
You can't have an inferiority complex without having a superiority.
Yep. That applies everywhere, doesn't it? Yeah, it's good. Yes, ma'am. If you don't know what you want, you won't know how to get it. What's interesting is even when you know exactly what you want, you may not know how to get there. That's where the subconscious begins to kick in, and it will intuitively help you get there. So yes, I agree with that. It's just like the real key on that is, are you clear on what you want? And then part two is, why do you want it? And if there's no emotion tied to that, you're not, you'd get to rewrite it if we were together, right? Yes, ma'am.
I just appreciate you talking about getting obsessed. I just think in a lot of Christian circles, we're so scared of even that kind of a word.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have the movement of Jesus today without him being obsessed for a 3-year period with no social media, and you see how it spread. So I just appreciate you bringing the topic that so often we shy away from, of being really obsessed about what we're doing, and that we can balance that with our Christian faith.
With our faith, yeah. Excellent, thank you. Brevity does expose clarity. Love it. Yes, ma'am.
The I don't deserve to be in the room is a poverty mindset of self-worth.
Poverty mindset is, how'd you word that again? I'm sorry.
The I don't deserve to be in the room is a poverty mindset of self-worth.
Oh. So good. Especially, the age of your kids. As parents, I know this is an old cliche, but it is so true. What they learn is far more caught than taught. And if a parent is speaking this and reacting like this, like, oh, we can trust God with everything, and then, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We're teaching them that our words really don't matter, and we're teaching them literally to have a poverty mindset because they're watching mom and dad do. So yes, it's a good one, especially as parents, to make sure that our walk and our talk align, and that's where authority is created. Very good. Yes, sir.
I'm going to go back to question and answer. Lance, could you answer this?
No.
How do you cultivate or increase that ruthless obsession? If you met with 100 people and 90 of them are ripping, or 95 of us, all of us, how do you increase that? If you don't have, you wake up and you don't have that.
Great question.
Maybe come from goals and that, but
No, it's a great question, and there's a framework that we use, and I'll share the story a little bit. And I kind of felt bad after doing it, but it's to cultivate. How do you word that again?
yeah, how do you cultivate or increase that ruthless?
The ruthless obsession. It really boils down to the why behind something. So many times, if I would ask anybody in this room, what do you really want? And you give me an answer. Too many times, coaches in my profession, unless they really dig in with the questions, right, asking the question of why. Oh, you want to make $500,000 this year? Okay, here's how we do it. We jump into the solution mode. What I'm going to do, whether it's weight, spiritual life, marriage, whatever it else is, it's like, okay, why is that important to you? One of the most important questions you could ask somebody is, why is that important to you? So when you begin to ask that question, you don't quit asking it until they can't answer anything else, or you feel the emotional engagement. It's like when you ask the question and you get the emotional engagement, okay, Now we've hit the mark. We know we've hit the emotional piece to that. So, transparency, it's real easy to be transparent about someone else's stuff too, right? So I'm going to be transparent about Allison. This is her problem for not being here. Oh, you're going to video this. Thanks, Aaron. What a friend. So I was asking Jen about what she thought about Aaron and what she said. So one of our first Fridays, Allison and I, we'd gone to this restaurant and we were there a few hours going through our stuff, which the First Friday form is also on the website. Really encourage couples to go get that. It is really good. And then we got to the dinner part, and I got into some of these questions. It was the absolute best year of your life, 2025, in the area of blank, because, and she picked the topic of health. And I said, okay, why is that important to you? And she started giving answers, superficial, surface type. Now, they were real, legit, but there was no emotional engagement with it. The seventh time I said, that makes sense, but why is that important to you? I looked up and she's crying. Who feels the energy? Right here. That's what I'm looking for. Her purpose is her grandkids. Wasn't herself, wasn't me. It was her grandkids. She wanted to make sure that she was healthy enough to be able to crawl around on the floor, go up and down stairs. You know, we've got an almost 6-year-old, and she's got a little brother that's 21 months, and he weighs more than she does. And he loves to be carried. But her purpose was surface. I'll have more energy. I'll have better self-esteem. Not that these are bad. I'll feel better in my clothes. It was like giving a bullet report or bullet list report. No energy. Then we started getting into the real why. Now, if I would have paused or stopped right at the beginning, which you don't ever do this as a spouse, by the way. Oh, here's how you lose weight. Go see Danny. I learned that one a long time ago. But if I would have stopped with just the surface answer, the likelihood that she's going to take the same level of focus on her health as she will now that we got to the real root of it, night and day. I could do the exact same thing with your spiritual life. Why is that important to you? You can give me the surface answers, but until I feel the emotion, we're going to keep asking the questions. Your business, your finances, until I get the raw emotional energy from you, I'm going to keep asking. This is something you can do on your own. It's just harder to avoid me when I'm looking you in the eyes. Right, Jeremy? What do you want? Why do you want it? Have time for one last question. Yes, sir.
Let me just make an observation. For me, these sometimes it feels mutually exclusive. I'm going to work on this stuff and all these things, and well, God, what do you want in my life? Like, what do you say? I just want to follow you, God. I just want to do what you want. Oh, but I want to go to work and go do all the things. And I would go quickly to one of those areas when in actuality these are building blocks. Turning from gears to building blocks. I'm hearing and seeing what God wants me to do in my life. I'm hearing His voice. And now I'm going to go do the work and write down these things to go do it. So when I think of thinking grow rich, it threw me for a loop because I'm a doer. I'm going to do all those things. And then I would do all the things and forget to go hear the voice of God first. So I'm learning and growing in business to go, oh, just your voice, Lord. just want to hear you. Just want to be in your will. Show me what you're saying to do and I'll align with you. And now let's put in the things that we're going to do to make those things happen. It's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. So to just piggyback on that to close it out, when I first decided I'm going to finally write a book, the first two topics Lance chose didn't go so well. It was like pulling teeth to get content onto the paper or the computer. But once I then paused and said, God, I don't know what to write on. I felt this, what is your real passion? Legacy. And then it was like, well, we'll start there. Once settled on the topic of legacy, it was like partnering with God in what he wanted was so much easier than me doing my own thing. 11:15. Another 15-minute break. Thank you, guys.